Welcome to my podcast. My name is Corrinala. I come to you from the Pacific Northwest where I live with my partner, our 2 kitties, and 2 adopted Mustangs. Information about the Wildhorse adoption program will be in the episode description box. This podcast covers knitting projects, my horsemanship journey, and my other passions like vegetable gardening and bicycling. If you're new here, I hope you find the content interesting. If you're a returning viewer, it's always great to have old friends. The format of this channel typically includes musings on an early walk to the barn to feed the horses, then knitting content, some catch up on the horsemanship journey, and finally more musings or maybe a little bicycling footage if I was lucky enough to get out. Enjoy, and I hope to see you soon. Hey friends, welcome to this episode of my podcast. It is Friday, February 27, 2026. As per usual, getting ready for the walk out to the barn. It's about 6:30 a.m. Just getting light out. It'll be too dark for you to see, but I'll be able to see. But while we're here, I'm going to talk about hand knitted socks and barn chores. So this is a pair of socks I made out of patent crochet, so a little bit heavier fingering weight. They're a little bit thicker, finding them a little bit warm. I'm considering giving them away, putting them in my donation bag. I just don't wear them very often because they're just a little thick and often a little too warm for my feet. I like the regular fingering weight yarn for socks. I don't wear my hand knitted socks out to the barn because, as this podcast title suggests, that hay loves yarn, and it really does. So I know some of you are able to wear your socks out to the barn, and I am curious what your methods are for keeping hay out of them, because, you know, especially these that I'm going to give away, I don't want bits of hay, and, you know, inevitably there is going to be some bits of hay in there just because hay likes to come into the house too. So, not only do I want to prevent hay from getting into my socks for socks that I want to give away, but you know, I'm trying to discourage hay from being tracked all over the house as well. So on that note, let's head out to the barn and feed the horses. I'm sure they'll be very glad for that. So pardon the awkward positioning as I get my bucket of goodies for the horses, meaning their morning grain and supplements. Putting on my boots. Hopefully that's not making me too dizzy. I'm trying to practice my Pilates and keep my upper body still as I, you know, waggle around my lower body, getting my boots on. There we go. I'm hoping you can hear the birds. It's still February, but this is definitely an indication that spring is coming. You see the light in the sky too? So this will change, you know, we'll have our time change and then it'll be dark in the morning again. We'll get more evening light in the evening, a lot more. Right now the sun's going down about around 6 p.m. Or no, the sun's going down earlier than that, but we have such long twilights here in the Pacific Northwest that dawn and dusk are they last a long time, which is really nice. All that to say, when it is light until 7 p.m., it doesn't really matter to us because we get up at 4 a.m. Sometimes even on weekends. So luckily I'm well adapted to falling asleep when it's still daylight out. So what's been going on? Well, I think I have 2 finished objects for you. I hope I didn't show one of them last week, but when I was updating my notes yesterday, I didn't see that I had. So hopefully I can show that to you. Horse-wise, I've been spending a lot of time, just non-demanding time with Bragi, just trying to build connection. And what I have found is that he's just much more willing to connect with me, do simple things like come into his stall when I ask him to, which before he was resistant to that. So I'm really trying to fill in those gaps that I've left behind for the last, well, almost 6 years. I've had him for almost 6 years, and I'm sure there are a lot of wise horsemen that would say that, you know, if you don't fill in those gaps early and often, you have to do it later. And that is very true. Odin we're doing our 5-minute PT walks up hills, just really focusing on taking our time, making sure he's straight, building his strength slowly. Hi guys. I'm not sure if it's light enough you can see. Oh, Bragi's just hard to see because he's a dark bay with no white on him. I have a new supplement for Odin to help his arthritis that the vet recommended, so he's still on a prescription medication I'm hoping to drop off. He's still on a diet, so he's coming into his stall already because he's very anxious for breakfast. So if I missed anything, I will catch you up later, but I'm going to get to feeding. Good morning again, friends. Welcome to the knitting and catch-up portion of this podcast or this episode. Let's just dive right in. I have a lot to show you, and first what I want to show you is what I'm wearing. So I am wearing the Flipside tee by Tanis Lavalee, I think. So let me see if I can back up. This yarn was given to me by my mom. It's a hand-dyed yarn from Idaho, and I kind of forgot about this tee until I was knitting a square in my 100-acre wood blanket with this yarn. I was like, oh yeah. And the gray and the purple, I believe, are a Knit Picks, possibly Stroll. Get back closer. A Knit Picks Stroll fingering weight yarn. And if I were to do this again, I would probably fade in the colors rather than stripe, but I didn't know about fading at the time until I knit the So Faded by Andrea Mowry earlier this year. These projects are in my Ravelry project page, so feel free to look there. I also have a pair of self-drafted socks. They're called the Winter Arctic Light. I knit these last summer when I went to the Fiber Fusion Northwest event in the beginning of June. So I just used a whole bunch of scrap yarn, I took a class by Pacific Knit Co. Jamie Lomax, so I'm going to take one of the socks off and show it to you because I'm pretty proud of it. Even though this morning, before I was getting ready for the walk out to the barn, I was saying I don't really care for these heavier socks. And this is definitely a heavier sock. This is made out of primarily DK weight and maybe even some worsted weight in here. So can you see the green walrus? So the class that I took by Jamie Lomax was showing how to use her doodles. So she provides doodle decks. They're just cards with these color work motifs. And she offers patterns, particularly socks and cowls, and I think some mitts. So I was just messing around. I just grabbed a bunch of scraps out of my stash that had good contrast and knit it. So the tusks on the walrus, they are color work. Well, they're sort of intarsia. I mean, I guess it's my version of intarsia. So I just cut, long strips of yarn and then just knitted that color when I got to it rather than carrying the float all the way around. I believe I used a US size 3 for this since they are DK weight. And since I have been doing more colorwork socks, which I will talk about that here in a moment. Let me get my sock back on because it's not quite warm enough to go barefoot yet. I've learned that the colorwork portion really needs to be in a whole size bigger. So, these fit fine. I think I blocked them. So that helps. But the difference between the stockinette and the colorwork definitely squeezes in. And sometimes if you do it too tightly, it's hard to get over your heel. So that's what I'm wearing. I was thinking this morning as I was getting dressed, I definitely need more fingering weight, long sleeve sweaters. So I'm going to work on that, and I'll talk more about that later. So some of my other sweaters that I have, like the worsted and I think even bulky weight, it's just a little too warm for being indoors. They're fine for being outside. I just, I work indoors, so I don't really spend that much time outside except for when I'm doing horse things. Well, let's talk about some finished objects. And on the walk to the barn, I mentioned that I wasn't sure if I had shown you the finished Valenvent socks. So this is what they look like. This pink, I know I've talked about them, but this pink is a self-striping yarn from Freckled Whimsey. It's one of the Halloween colorways, and it's called Happy Pinkoween. And then these two are from the So Faded. Speaking of the So Faded, one is peony, and I honestly don't remember what the lighter kind of yellow color is, but these are little hearts. So, and normally what I do is I put finished socks in my sock stash because I have a sock drawer full of socks that I wear, but I really want to wear these. So, and these winter Arctic Light socks were in my sock stash, but since I'm starting to think about giving away socks that are, too heavy or I'm throwing them away because they're getting felted, I am starting to incorporate some of my sock stash back into my sock drawer. So let's talk about, I don't remember the needle size of those socks. They're probably, I think 1.25, and then for the color work I used a whole size bigger, so 2.25 I believe millimeter. Is that right? There, if I'm not right, it's the notes are in my project page, and I have been doing a good job of keeping track of details like that on my Ravelry project page. So next finished object, I think I talked about this. This is the Melt the Ice hat. Let me take out my glasses. So this is a pattern. It's a Norwegian protest hat. Can you see the tassel? There we go. It's a ribbed hat. It's made out of Legacy Fiber Arts DK yarn in the colorway Resist. So I used, so this is a bag made by my mom, and that's the bag that this project was in. I have 53 grams of a 100-gram ball left. So I think I'm going to make another one at some point. I'm not immediately, but you know, I might keep this project bag together. I used a US size 5 needle instead of the recommended 6 because I do have a little bit looser gauge. So it's a very comfy hat. So haven't been anywhere recently, but I'm gonna start, or since I finished it, but I'm gonna start wearing it. And I don't remember who the designer is. But those details again are my Ravelry project page, which I have updated. So very fun hat, very quick knit. I think it took me maybe a week. Oh, maybe longer. Sometimes time just goes by, and that's that. I mentioned the 100-acre wood blanket, but I'm still not going to show it. I mean, I do a little bit of work on it here and there, but I really just want to show it to you when I have a strip done. So I'm almost done with the 3rd strip. I know I keep saying that. I just didn't get that much time to knit during the day this week. I'll talk about you know, more work stuff later, but it really was about work. What else do I have going on? Okay, I have a half finished object. So finally I finished one of the Purr-fect Purr-fect sock, Purr-fect by Charlotte Stone. So this is I don't even know when I cast it on. So short row heel, not my favorite heel. I mean, it's a quick heel. It fits fine, but I'm not very good at closing the gaps. So, and it's really a single layer of yarn. So I'm not actually anticipating that this sock lasts very long, which is a bummer because these kitties are adorable and they go all the way around. I wasn't sure. Usually on the foot, it's just plain stockinette, but this one goes all the way around. I tried it on. It feels fine. I haven't really walked around with it. There are a ton of ends to weave in. I knit over my ends. There's a good tutorial. There's the Weavin' Steven by Stephen West. I think he has a tutorial about that. And there's also Love and Stitches Nitty Natty has a tutorial on how she does it. And I use a combination of both. One thing that's a little bit difficult about this pattern is that in some cases you're carrying 3 different yarns. Color work is pretty easy if you carry or just with 2 colors in any given row, but these have 3, and that's a little bit challenging, and I think sometimes that made it feel like I didn't want to do it, knit on these, but I have a good routine now. Now I just need to cast on the 2nd sock. Oh, this bag also made by my mom. This fabric, I was with her actually when she purchased it. I didn't know she was intending to make a bag for me, but the cherries were from a fabric store in Door County, Wisconsin, which is on Lake Michigan, and it's fairly well known for their sweet cherries, and probably their pie cherries too, I would imagine, but pretty good. So when we were there, could have been 2024, could have been 2023. I'm thinking 2023. So my mom, my sister, and I visited Sturgeon Bay and stayed up there for a few days, and it was really fun. What else? I have made some progress on my Summer Lee socks, the Surf Wax socks. So since I finished the Valenvent socks, I have been spending a little bit more of my morning time knitting. So I've got some like ramen yarn here because this is repurposed yarn, which is absolutely fine for this particular pattern. This is a Freckled Whimsey colorway. I'm not sure I still have the label for it, so I don't remember what it is. But if I do have the label, it will be in my show notes. So I'm using the, I think these are the 2.5 millimeter needles. These are the 9-inch circular Chowgu twists, which I'm really enjoying the 9-inch circular. I didn't think I would, but I really like them. I do have to keep a different set of needles in, a longer one with a longer cord. I don't know if you got that about the toe decreases because my camera decided to stop recording. But that's what so I end up doing the last few rounds of toe decreases on magic loop. What else? I'm almost getting through the knitting. So I am still working on, this bag was made by my husband. He has an industrial sewing machine, and this is the Sock Arms cardigan by Stephanie Lotven that has turned into a pullover. So I have made some progress on it. I'm really just in the stockinette section. I accidentally started the sweater in a US size 3 and needle, and I have, since I've got it to the body, I have switched to a US size 4, the recommended needle size. So I was knitting the yoke as if it was going to be a cardigan, and then when I got to the underarm part, I was like, well, you know, I think I want this to be a pullover. So it is going to have like a V. I'm thinking of doing a ribbing so that in the contrast color, which I'll show you in a minute, so that it kind of folds over a little bit. So we'll see how that works. I'm expecting this to be a little bit oversized, which is fine. It's not my usual preference for sweaters. I like them to have maybe 1 inch of positive ease or 0 ease. So otherwise, you know, when your clothing is too loose and it gets in your way, that's annoying. This is a pattern out of this book, Knit Happy with Self-Striping Yarn. There's several examples on the back of what the patterns are, and I have knit 2 of those. I've knit the that tee and that tee. I've knit this one twice. So the yarn is Knit Picks Gloss in the colorway Clarity, and the arms and the ribbing, or at least around the collar, are going to be this. This is Jeepers Creepers colorway by Freckled Whimsey. This is the self-striping yarn. So I think this is going to be a really fun sweater to wear. It's a lot of stockinette, so lots of round and round and round. So, you know, easy knitting if you're tired or don't want to think too hard, but it can get tedious too, at least in my opinion. I hope you have something nice to drink. I am still working on my tea. I have a lovely roasty green tea that my sister gave me for Christmas, and it is delicious. And finally, let me see what else. I'm looking at my notes here. So I have a new cast on. Why, do you ask? Well, because, you know, I finished 2 objects. Why not cast on something else? This is a bag my mom gave me for Christmas. I love this bag. It has the black kitties, so much like our Herbert and Harley. And the reason why is because Andrea Mowry is doing her spring make-along, and it using one of her patterns. I already had this pattern. I already had the yarn all wound up. It was just sort of sitting, waiting for the nudge to get going. So I am going to knit the Traveler. I'm knitting the Crew version. So I just finished the gauge swatch this morning, and I cast on. So mine will not have a hood. I am using repurposed yarn. You have seen this yarn before in other projects. So the main body of this yarn is going to be this multicolored Cascade 220 Superwash Merino. It's very soft. It almost feels kind of like cottony. This yarn has been repurposed twice. Since I'm a little short on yarn, I am doing the ribbing in this color, which is also Cascade 220. I'm calling it Rust. I don't know if that is the official colorway or not. So I knit 2 gauge swatches. And let me say, the make-along starts March 1st, and I'm aware that it's not yet March 1st. However, whips are allowed. So I won't get a lot done on it because March 1st is Monday, right? Looking at my calendar. No, it's Sunday. Okay. So I'll probably start again in earnest. So I knit the gauge swatch in a US size 4. That's the recommended needle size. My gauge is a little bit bigger. And so I emailed the pattern support team and asked, what do I do? Do I pick a different size? And they suggested that I do a different gauge swatch in a smaller needle, or a different needle size to get gauge. So I did a gauge swatch in a US size 3. Well, I got a lot more stitches per inch. So, and I always rip out my gauge swatches. Well, not always, depending on how much yarn I have. Since I feel short on yarn, I decided I would rip it out and just start casting on. So I just opted to go with the larger needle size, the US size 4. And I did a little math to figure out the ratio of my gauge compared to the pattern gauge. And it was like a 0.93, which is pretty close. So I picked a size that was closest. I will say about Andrea Mowry's patterns instructions that they're very clear, as long as you read them. And she has a nice clear note on how to pick the size. So, and there's a recommended ease, but then there's your desired ease. Like this pattern is anywhere from, I think, like up to 6 inches of positive ease. Well, I wouldn't like that. So I am picking one that has maybe 1 inch of ease or 0 ease. And with my gauge being a little bit looser, it may end up being 2 inches of positive ease, which is okay. I can live with that, especially for a sweater that is designed to be kind of like a hoodie or a sweatshirt. We used to call them a sweatshirt in my day. Now they're called hoodies. So then with that ratio of 0.93, I went to the size that I want, the cast on stitches, and multiplied that ratio number times the number of stitches recommended for the size that I chose. And that came up with a slightly smaller number of stitches. So I'm feeling pretty confident about that. And this is as far as I've gotten. So just one cast on, 1 row of ribbing on the US size 3. So I'm using the recommended needle sizes. The ribbing is always smaller needle. And then when I start doing the main body, I will switch to that multicolor, that variegated yarn and the larger needles. So hopefully that's enough information about how I work my sweaters. I know I've mentioned in other episodes that sometimes, because I don't necessarily like a gapy neck, I mean, this is a tee, so it kind of doesn't matter, but for my sweaters, I want them pretty close because I almost always wear a t-shirt underneath them. Sometimes if it's warmer than it is right now, I'll wear a tank top, which is fine to have a more gapy neck. But when you wear a t-shirt, like, a lot of the t-shirt shows through. So often what I do is I'll start with a very small size so that I have the neck that I want. And then once the increases start, then I increase to the sweater size that I want. All right. So
still working on the Stashdown plans. I have a few things to mention right now. So, of course, finish my current whips. Oh, I forgot. I have a little show and tell. But before that, some of my Scrapdown, Stashdown plans include making myself an Advent for Christmas. I often get an Advent. Well, then I have all these. And the last couple of years, I've gotten an Advent from Legacy Fiber Arts, and they are the half skeins, the 50-gram skeins, which is perfect for a pair of socks for me. And but they're not doing it this year. And I do have a lot of mini skeins from previous Advents. So since Advent season, or the time to order Advents is coming, I thought I would take a lot of those scraps, go through them, and wrap myself up an Advent, and like in end of March, beginning of April, and then put it away, because I will totally forget the order that I did things. All right, so I was just cleaning out stuff the other day, and I came across this magazine that I bought, I want to say 2012. It's a crochet magazine. This is really before I got very into knitting. The reason why I picked it up is that my grandmother at the time, she was still alive at the time. She was well into her 90s. In fact, she might have been 97 by then. And I was crocheting, and that didn't make sense, did it? Grandma was a knitter, and she also taught me how to crochet when I was about 5. And she gave me a ball of yarn and a crochet hook, told me how to make a chain, and I made a chain like probably that could have wrapped around the house a couple times. So I crocheted blankets, but I'd never really crocheted garments. And since Grandma was definitely into her old age at that time, and Mom and I were spending a lot of time with her, but not really being able to do anything. She didn't really have the capability of being active, but we just wanted to spend time with her. So I thought, well, Grandma used to always knit while visiting, and so why don't I make something and crochet. I thought it would be a way to connect with her, because she was starting to get nonverbal at that time. And I'm trying to find the pattern that I made, but I'm having a hard time doing that. So I did make a tunic, which I have worn. This is a well-loved magazine. Oh, okay. I think I'm getting close here. Well, I have this page marked. Is that something? Well, I'm not finding it. All that to say, it's a crocheted tunic that you could wear with leggings. I wear it with a skirt sometimes, or nope, that's not it either. Although I do like this. Kind of like this. I'm trying to hold the spot of the pattern I do want to show you. So that Cleopatra dress, that's pretty cool too. So let me show you what I am actually going to knit. This is called the Vernal top here, and it's made with cotton. I happen to have quite a bit of gray cotton that I used for my it's a cardigan by Rebecca Clow, and I'm gonna make another one so I can tell you here what it is, and that the pattern's in my show notes. So let me just look. Corin cardigan. So I made it out of this gray cotton. I have a ton left. And so I'm going to make that top with it. And I thought what I would do, I have all these Jimmy Bean little tiny projects from years ago. And they all have like these little bits of yarn. This one actually has quite a lot. Most of them don't have that much yarn, and then they come with a little project to make. And the project for this particular bag that has all this yarn in it is for like felted soap holders. But you know, this is pretty nice yarn, so I don't know that I want to use it for soap holders. What I will say is that I thought what I would do, because the gray, I thought I would kind of weave in some of these scraps. Maybe not these particularly, maybe. We'll see. We'll see. We'll see how this goes. It's crochet, so, you know, crochet is pretty easy to rip out. But let me show you another example of some yarn and the quantity and the way that I am thinking about sort of weaving it in. So this is a more typical quantity. And so just well, this one's not going to show up because it's gray. But just incorporating these colors in about every other row to make it interesting. So that's my plan. I'm trying to see if there are other ones that have some brighter colors. Oh yeah, here's a good example. That one. So I think it'll be pretty. I'm probably not going to be able to do this with all of these bags that I have, but I think this is a good example of one. So that is part of my Stashdown plan. So once I get either the new cast on done, the Traveler, or the sock arms pullover done, this will be my next cast on. So I have a full list of what my cast down plans are based on the stash that I have in my project show notes. So if you're interested in ideas for patterns, that's what I have. So that's it for the knitting. I can talk about some life stuff, and I usually talk about the weather, which I didn't do this morning. It had been raining, which kind of surprised me, because it's been every day the forecast has promised rain, but it hasn't really rained, which, that's kind of nice. And it's been, like kind of cool spring weather. Not time to plant the garden yet, although sometimes it's really tempting. It hasn't been particularly sunny for the last week, just kind of cloudy and cool, but not raining, which I don't mind that at all. If you watch gardening channels, they're starting all kinds of plants and stuff like that. I have done that before, and then the plants, we always get like a cold spell in March and April, so it's kind of not worth it. I still have my indoor garden going. The tomatoes, the little tomatoes from Territorial Seed that are bred to thrive in 6-inch pots, those are doing fine. Cucumber too. The pepper is a little slow to germinate, but it sprouted. So that's kind of what I'm paying attention to garden wise. What else is going on? I talked about the horses. I need to text my vet because I got a new supplement for him. So just figure out what she wants to see in terms of his, whether his lameness has improved with the prescription. And, now that I'm adding the supplement and been consistent about doing his PT exercises. So I need to do that. I mentioned with Bragi, my trainer's coming over today. I have been working on non-demanding time and just building connection with him, which I think goes a long ways for the times that we do have demanding time. And today, I hope that, the plan is that he goes in the trailer and we just take a lap around the driveway. We'll see if that is what indeed happens, because every day is a new day for Bragi. The good news is I'm not in a hurry with him. I've had him for 6 years, and his purpose for being here was really being a companion horse to Odin. And I am still very much focused on Odin because he's easy to be around. Bragi's a little tough because he can be a bit unpredictable. And I know some experienced horse people will say there's always signs. And I've had Bragi for 6 years. And sometimes I look for signs where there aren't. And I don't, because too many times I have been taken by surprise by him. And he gets startled. He ends up startling me, which startles him. And it's not good. So I'm trying to build confidence and calmness so that when I'm there, even if something is, and the reason why it's unpredictable with Bragi is because there can be something a quarter mile away that he can sense, of course, but, or something at the neighbor's house that he is aware of, but it's not within our range, human range, of really being concerned about it. Sometimes he's in his stall and eating, and there are deer out in the back pasture that no one can see, but he knows they're there. So horses have amazing senses, and I appreciate that. I just need for him to look to me for answers, and that's really what I am working on. And also for Bragi to be really successful, I need, anything new, it's something that I need to pepper in, like 5 days a week. Well, I don't have 5 days a week to work with both Bragi and Odin, and Odin is my priority, especially since he needs PT. And the reason why I don't have 5 days is because I work full time. So, and that just kind of brings me to the next subject is next week we have the return to office. And I am going to start going out on the field in Mondays, which I realize isn't the office, but it is still public facing, in-person public facing. And then in Thursdays, I need to commute down south, which is an hour if it's low traffic, which is rare in the Puget Sound. But if I leave early enough, then it works. And then it's at least an hour and a half, if not 2 hours on the way home. So significant chunk of my day taken away from me because the new executive that was elected last November, that was something that he feels is better government, is that when there's more face-to-face time. So change is hard. There's been a lot of grumbling. I've certainly done my fair share of grumbling, but I'm willing to give it a go. I like my colleagues, so that's the good news. What I can't stand is sitting in traffic. But I have lots of podcasts and a book on tape by Karen Rolfe of Dressage Naturally. So that's how I'm going to spend that time, just thinking about horses if I can't spend time with them physically. I am pleased to report, speaking of horses, is that Odin is back on track in the right direction on his diet. So he's lost about 10 pounds, close to 10 pounds in the last week. So, and he needs to lose probably a total of about 100 pounds. So he's a big horse, so he can afford to lose that. It's not his idea of a good time. I will say that. On that note, I will hope you've enjoyed. I know this is a long one. I had a lot of knitting content, but take care, everyone, and I'll see you next time.